Sure.
Pretty much everybody in the security industry has heard the phrase shift left, meaning it's time to have the developers fix the problems before they get out there in the wild and before it can be a, real problem in operations and production. But shift left, does it really work? I'm here with Leon Adato, and we are talking about shift left here at Cleveland's ISS Summit.
Hi there. Thank you for having me. It's great to be back. Okay, so the first thing I have to get out of the way is that often shift left, like you described, turns into what I affectionately call shit left, which is just dumping. Yes, he swore. Which means that you're just dumping work on somebody and they have absolutely no tools or capability or resources to deal with that work. And that is in fact the problem of it. I understand why shift left is attractive for both management and also even development teams. But and the reason why it's attractive is if you look at a graph of when security bugs are introduced versus when they're detected, you can pretty much guess, right? At the one side of the graph, the bugs are introduced way up, at the development cycle, and then they're not introduced as it goes further toward production. And yet the cost of fixing bugs is almost exactly opposite of that. That it costs almost nothing at the introduction phase, but then as it gets further toward production, the cost of fixing that bug or that security issue becomes much higher. And the issue is, how do we get the detection and the fix closer to the cheaper part of the graph? And again, the problem is that we want it, but we don't enable it.
Well, I think one of the problems here is right there in your description, and that is you repeatedly said or conflated basically bugs and security issues. And truly, all security issues are actually just bugs.
Yeah.
Because if the code was pristine and perfect, there would be no security issues, right? I mean, you could basically you'd be fine because everything would work as expected and nothing would fail and there would be no edge cases and no corner cases and no exploits and no 0 days and everything would just work. But that's completely unrealistic because everybody knows that software has bugs because software developers aren't perfect and assumptions aren't perfect and things happen. So I think really right there is the heart of the issue.
Well, you just hit on one way to make it better, to turn shit left back into shift left, which is identifying security issues as a code quality issue, not a separate thing from what the developer is already doing. Because lots of developers are okay with code that isn't pristinely secure. That's all right. That's part of the process of iterative development. But no developer on earth is going to say, I actually ship low quality code. That's a thing I do. Like, no one says that. So if we reframe it as quality issue, all of a sudden the stakes become higher and the engagement in the development community becomes much, much more involved. That's the first thing. And then the other thing is you can't present security issues in a separate tool, in a separate process, because developers actually have other work to do. They're actually trying to ship code. They're actually trying to do their bug fix list.
So and develop features.
And build features, right? Also,
and of course, integrate artificial intelligence.
It's a requirement now. Everything has to have ChatGPT built into it now, which is a security issue of its own we won't talk about. But the idea is that you have to build things into the cycle so that it looks like a natural part of the process. The other thing I can't emphasize enough is that at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, developers have goals and they are rated on those goals, and exactly 0 of them are rated on how secure the code is that you shipped. Nobody's bonus ever is based on the security level of their code. It is based on how many features you shipped, how many bugs you fixed, and so on. Shipping secure code, the number of security features you either caught or the number of security issues that it didn't have comparative to the previous quarter, whatever, has to be part of the evaluation cycle.
Yeah, and there again, I think that this gets to that core problem that, the split between software development and IT operations.
Yeah.
And essentially, as you're saying, security issues only become issues when things are in production, when they're in the operational phase. And as you said, I mean, it's not only more challenging and more expensive to fix bugs when they're discovered in the operations phase, it's also less likely to prevent them because, of course, software developers may not really be all that savvy on security necessarily. I mean, and we see this the same in basically all areas of technology. I mean, software developers don't really know networking. Software developers don't really know storage. They don't really know how to manage resources in a production system. I can't expect them to know anything about security.
Right, so you have to present things in a way that makes sense to them and is repeatable by them. Again, the tool you can't have a separate tool that you run a security scan on 3,000 lines of code and say, oh, we found a SSL flaw somewhere. Good luck. I mean, that's like bad monitoring, which you and I have talked about all the time. Like, you can't just say, something went wrong, good luck. You've got to give specifics. If you have a way, and there are tools that do this, that scan the code and say, I found this issue at this line, and here's a repeatable command you can issue to replicate that. And then the developer can go back, fix the code, just run that one command and say, did it fail or did it work against my new code base? And when it doesn't work anymore, bug fixed. You can also present the issues in the IDE, in the development environment itself, so that they can see they never have to leave their IDE. To be perfectly honest, as a developer, anytime you have to walk away from your IDE, it's already a bad day. I don't care if it's a meeting or getting another cup of coffee. Being in the IDE is our happy place. And so presenting security issues, just like you see bugs, just like you see pull requests, just like you see any other element of your development day, that makes it so much easier and so much more natural to respond to.
So without getting into products necessarily, though it is legal to mention products, my feeling is, though, or my question would be, how realistic is it to be able to present security issues, which, as I said, fundamentally are all about production and operations? How realistic is that to bring those all the way back to the development phase and present them in the IDE, like you're saying? Is that even possible?
Not only possible, but it's happening today. There are multiple products that do this today, and I'm not going to name names, but the idea is, one of the keys to it is, first of all, the fact that our code repositories are often, I'll say public. I know they're private. GitHub is a thing, right? But private GitHub is also a thing. But being able to scan code for 0 days and things like that is easy. However, that is to use a database concept or a storage concept. That's data at rest. Mm-hmm. Data at rest is easy to scan because it's at rest, and you can run the scan at 2 o'clock in the morning. You also need to understand data in motion, because even if I fixed a bug in the code base, if it didn't get pushed out into the running phase, whether it's test or QA or sandbox or production, knowing what's running is important, and understanding that it may not match the fix I did because my CI/CD pipeline may be flawed or a system just didn't take the update or what have you. And the key there is actually tracing, one of the newer aspects of monitoring, which of course is a love of mine. So tracing can tell you what code is running right now, and it can tell you how it's interacting with all the other elements and what's happening with it. And therefore you can talk about, again, I'm going to say data in motion. That you can see how the security, and you can say, oh, wait a minute, I see that it's fixed over here in the code base, but I can see that it's not fixed over here, and raise a flag on that also. All these things exist today. If your tools don't do that, it's time to look for new tools. And that's as much of a product placement as I'm going to say.
Well, thank you so much. It's been great to talk about this. We talk about things like this quite a lot at our Security Field Day event. So check out techfieldday.com and look for Security Field Day. We also talk about this variously on our Gestalt IT on-premise podcast, so you can find on-premise IT in your favorite podcast application. And at gestaltit.com, you'll find more coverage of security and other enterprise IT information. Before we go, Leon, where can we connect with you and continue this conversation?
So my first name is Leon, my last name is Adato. You can find me at adatosystems.com, and also I am a principal technical evangelist at kentik.com.